You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.
What up, Sea of Red? You're listening to Into the Flames, a Calgary Flames fan podcast.
Your home for all things Flames and updates around the NHL.
With your hosts, Raja Burri and Noah Eppelston.
Into the Flames. New episodes every Sunday.
You know, like the discourse has devolved. I think it's kind of more like a coping mechanism more than anything, to be like, we don't want to deal with the fact that like our organization is in such shambles and like the Oilers have a clear road to the Stanley Cup. So we're just like, yeah, what's like the latest gossip? It's just like a person who their personal life is so bad that all they care about is like celebrity gossip. So we're just like, oh, did you hear the new mean thing Daryl Sutter said? Or did you hear how this player likes Daryl Sutter? This player hates him. So it's all to fill the empty void in our hearts, right?
Pretty much. I guess, do you want to start with GM or coach?
I mean, I think it's easier to probably start with GM because, like,
fair,
you know, everything flows from there, right? It's okay. I got to do my little preface, because like everything you can try to conceptualize, right? It comes back to this. Like, I think the question is on everybody's mind is, are they going to get it right this time? Because, you know, like if you've been a Flames fan for a long time, or not even for a long time, you know, like it's like. We've seen this life cycle happen for most of us at least once. Mm-hmm. We saw the Sutter era end and the Feaster era begin and end quickly, and then the Tree Living era. Yeah, you know, so it's like we've been through this. So it's like if you're looking forward to the new direction and everything, I mean, that's cool. I'm not going to take that away from you. I'm trying not to be cynical about it, but it's like I don't even think it's from being cynical. It's more like I've seen this happen already. I've seen it been, you know, like messed up already. So it's like, are you going to get it right this time? You know, because obviously, like, you know, the thing with the Flames, like, 30 years, 15 coaches in like 20 years, however many GMs, no playoff wins, right? It's hard to say, oh yeah, they're going to get it right this time when it's been 30 years of like, hey, you haven't really got it right, you know? So that's where I think I'm at this point is like, hey, you can say all the right things, which they're doing, right? Like Don Maloney saying all the right things. Hey, that's encouraging. You can even do all the right things. You can hire somebody who I believe in and who I like, and I think is going to do a good job. But it's like, we're at the point where it's like, until I see meaningful change in action, like, and not even change, like meaningful results. And that doesn't mean winning the Stanley Cup next year or the next 2 years or whatever. But it's like, until it's something other than making the playoffs, missing the playoffs, making the playoffs, missing the playoffs, not winning in the playoffs, winning 2 playoff rounds in like 16, 17, 18 years, until I start to see the plan in action, then you kind of have to just be like, yeah, I guess we'll see, right?
A guy like Conroy, like when he was brought in the management role, at first he was the special assistant to Feaster, which is like the most office
assistant to the regional manager's assistant secretary.
You can always say the organization has been like grooming him to eventually get the, you know, GM position, but like, I don't know. I feel like if it was Conroy, we wouldn't be sitting here waiting to figure out who it would be.
Well, it's an interesting thing, right? Like they've been grooming him. Like, does that matter? Who cares if he's not the best guy for the role? Like it doesn't, it's a sunk cost fallacy. Like it doesn't matter if you've been grooming him, if he's not the correct guy for the role. And the thing that's funny is like, cause you're asking like, are you an internal guy or an external guy? And it's like, you know, like I think it would be good for this good for this organization to go outside and at least be like, interviewing people who haven't been here for so long, right? Because like you look at the Flames management, I like Conroy, like maybe he would do a great job, but it's like you look at the Flames management team over the past however long he's been here, 12 years, and it's not like you're looking at them as like, hey, we want to do what Calgary's doing. Nobody's doing that. Most people are like, hey, just don't do what don't do what Calgary's doing, right? So like it doesn't hurt to have somebody else from an other organization who's had success at whatever level come in and be like, hey, here's what we've been doing. Here's what's been working. Here's some strategies we can implement. Even if that is in a capacity that's supportive of Conroy in the role. But it's kind of funny. Like, I keep thinking, like, maybe the fact they're resistant to give, because initially I think it's a positive thing. I was like, yeah, don't just give him the job. Don't just, because it's like easy PR move. Obviously, all the fans, like, we'd be rooting for him hardcore. He's been groomed for it. It makes sense. Don't just give him the job because it makes sense. He has to get the job because he's earned it. But it's like, then my mind is like, hey, if they're not giving him the job, it's like they're George and Seinfeld's. Like, every instinct they have has been wrong for the past 20 years. So the opposite must be right. So maybe if the wrong thing to do is to give Conroy the job, you should give Conroy the job. Do the opposite of what you think. Everything they should, that's how they should run the organization from now on. Every instinct Murray Edwards has is be like, do the exact opposite, and it'll work. Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I personally, at this moment in time, as they're interviewing people, as they're going through their due process or whatever, I would, my inclination is somebody from the outside would be like, yeah, I think an outside hire, or at least a bunch of outside interviews, is necessary or probably a good thing.
Yeah. And I mean, like, today on 32 Thoughts, Friedman mentioned a few guys. He mentioned Mark Hunter more than once now, the owner, president, GM of the London Knights. And then a few of the boys out of Carolina, like Tulsky, who we talk about quite a bit. And I would look for a data-driven guy to come in and take over. Aaron Schwartz, Darren York, and then guys like Brandon Pridham from the Leafs, Rich Peverly, Jason Botterill. I mean, I'd be hesitant on the whole Botterill hire, but okay.
Yeah.
But those are the names that he name dropped on 32 Thoughts today. I think in regards to fundamentally, I would love a data-driven guy. Guys like Eric Tulsky, for example. Like, is that guy not like the smartest analytics guy in the league?
He's got a PhD in chemistry.
Like, seriously.
He could be cooking meth on the side or something, but he chooses to be a hockey guy. Like, come on.
Yeah, like, I would think like Jason Karmanos is another name that kind of fits that bill.
I think what you notice, though, like in all of these instances, is like, you're not just going to individuals, right? You're not just going like, oh, Tulsky in Carolina, Hunter here. Well, maybe Hunter here, but like, I think ultimately when you're looking at it's groups of people, which is kind of what I'm more interested in seeing. Like I said, like, maybe if it's Conroy and you bring somebody else to assist him, like, I think that's kind of also maybe kind of the issue with the Flames the last few years, is like, I'm not so sure what everybody on Brad Shilliving's staff has been doing and how much input every guy has and how like great of a team that is. Cause like, you look at Carolina and it's like, if you told me Don Waddell is their GM, I'd be like, what? Like, the guy who used to run the Thrashers in the 2000s, that must be like a really old school hockey. But no, it's like, it's Don and Eric Tulsky. Like, there's clear collaboration, and Karmanos, like all these guys. So it definitely comes back to, like you're saying, data driven. Like, it comes back to the organizational vision, which is why this is such a difficult conversation, because it's like, this team has never really had an organizational vision other than make the playoffs every year. So it's like, but it does come back to that. It's like, what are you trying to do? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And what do you want your team to look like? And how do you want to get to your goal if you have one, other than just making the playoffs? And that has to be more than just one guy you hire. So I'm curious to see, like, if it is Conroy, do they bring somebody else in as well? Like, obviously, I'd be a huge Tulsky fan. I think, like, I don't even know if he wants to leave Carolina. He's been there a long time. He would be, I think, a good guy to man the ship for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Mark Hunter's kind of interesting. Like, I mean, I think he was in the running for the Dubas job. And again, like, it maybe, who knows, like, in a dream world, I know lots of people don't like Kyle Dubas. I love Kyle. I think Kyle Dubas has done an exceptional job in Toronto. I think, I would hope that if he was fired by the Leafs or let go or whatever, the Flames would be interested in him. But I just think you need a team, and you need a well fleshed out team of people with specific skill sets. that all contribute to getting this team on track. Because, you know, like I've said this about Tree Living. It's like, I don't know if I'd want him to be the GM, but I think he'd be a good person to have on your staff. AGM, like he's a smart guy. There's lots of smart people. So I think it comes back to, what do the Flames want to do? You know, like you can hire the smartest guy in the world. If he's just there on an island by himself, taking marching orders from the owner, then like, hey, that's not going to lead anywhere. So I don't know. In my ideal world, you hire a team of guys, you know, one of them, it'd be nice to have some data-driven guys in there, but also some guys who can deal with, I don't know if you'd call them meddlesome, but what would you call them? Sometimes antagonistic Calgary Flames owners.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a good word.
Who it's like, or delusional. Maybe that's a better word. It's like the new hire is like, listen, we need to spend a few years developing and acquiring young talent. And Murray Edwards is like, so what you're saying is we're going to be in the playoffs next year. And then he's like, no, we have to spend some time developing young talent, and it might take a couple years. And then Murray Edwards like opens his glass door lever that shows like the sharks underneath swirling around him. He's like, no, what you mean is we're going to make the playoffs next year. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll go sign James Neal and Troy Brouwer, you know? So it's a hard conversation, but I think you do want to pinpoint just smart individuals who are all on the same page, who are going towards one goal, who have specific skill sets that work together.
Yeah, basically the anti-dysfunction. So the
exactly
of what we've basically
Correct.
led to believe since January.
Yeah.
Of what's been going on.
I guess, and that's the other thing with Conroy too. One last thing on him is like, I don't really know what his response. He's got his hand in a lot of pots or whatever, right? Like it seems like he does a lot. We don't really know a lot about what the Flames managers do specifically, other than like Brad Pascal does the AHL stuff, Chris Snow does the analytics data stuff, and like Conroy does stuff, everything. I don't know. So it's hard to say. It is hard to say, right? And it's kind of like you can't even put a name to it specifically. Like again, I'd like Tulsky, I'd like Dubas, I'd like Karmanos. I don't know. Like there's lots of different names out there, but it has to be in line with like an overall vision for what this team can do.
So basically, no to Sean Burke, just because he's friends with Don Maloney.
Like, what? Poor Don Maloney, eh? He's just like, he looks like he walked off like the golf course like yesterday and it's just been like thrown. He's like, I've retired. Like, I don't need this shit. And he's just like put in the most stressful situation ever. Yeah, not Sean Burke, not Stan Bowman.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. I was like, is he like in the process that it would take for us to hire a new GM, that he would still not be cleared by the league to go back to work.
Yeah,
Like what? Like, all right. I guess now's a good spot to put in that DraftKings sponsor. Light the lamp during the NHL playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can make a $5 bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can make a $5 playoff hockey bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. Must be 21 years of age or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for offer details. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources.
Anyone that's not like Jay Feaster, because again, like that's the thing, right? Like,
yeah,
like you can tell me, like, because that was what was so weird about like back, if some of you remember, like what that was like. It was like Daryl's leaving, and it was like, okay, new start, and it was like, no, it isn't. Like Iggy didn't get. I think you kind of forget that. Like Daryl didn't leave, and then they traded Iggy like right away. It was like they went for it again the next year. Like they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna make the playoffs." I was like, "No, you're not. You're terrible." And then Jay Feaster gets fired for gross incompetence and is terrible. And I mean, Brian Burke was brought in to bring some professionalism back to the organization. So it's like, hopefully, that's not the road bump we have to go through first to get to someone who's half confident.
Exactly. Like it'd be nice to just like set some sort of path. Like
Yeah, exactly. Chart a path forward.
Give me 3 years. Like, what's the team gonna look like in 2026?
Exactly.
Like that's all I'm asking.
I know it's not like a huge ad. That's what I find so crazy about like when you see Bean and Maloney or whatever, and they're on there going like, "We're a good team. We're good. We have Jacob Markstrom. God damn it!" And it's just like, dude, like, whoa. I just want to know, like, where are you going to be in 5 years? I'm hoping we're not going to be having this press conference again in 2 years. You know, so it's not that hard. Just like you don't have to even articulate to us. Just like show us there's some path forward here.
And speaking of press conferences that happen every 2 years, let's talk about coaching. I guess internal candidates would be Ryan Huska and Mitch Love. I liked what you would always say about those like AHL hires. Like you're either getting John Cooper or Travis Green. So
yeah. It's hard to say. It's hard to translate, right? And there's no hard and fast rules in this. And it's funny because like if they don't make the right decision on this coach and GM, we'll in 2 years we'll be like, you know, like let's say they hired Conroy. In 2 years we'll be like, why didn't they go outside the organization? Those idiots. What are they supposed to do? If they hire somebody from outside the organization, we'll be like, why didn't they hire Conroy? Right. So it's always hard to project and say like this is good. Like even compare the Daryl Sutter thing is like everyone was like, holy shit, I can't believe how good this team is last year. Right. Like what a great choice of coach. So good. And then like a year later, everyone wants to kill him. So, you know, it's always hard. And when you're getting something new, it is always like, right. Like I think that's kind of what's going on with Mitch Love right now specifically is like, oh, he's doing really well in the AHL. He's a really nice guy. He's doing a bang up job. He seems like the players love him. It's like, that's kind of like shiny new toys. Like, oh, he could come fix all of our problems. So that's why we leave it up to the people in charge to make good decisions. Whether they make those good decisions is another story. But yeah, AHL success to NHL success isn't always a slam dunk. It doesn't mean you're not a good coach if you know you don't have success. But just the NHL is so different, right? Like even just like from a pure perspective of like who you're managing, what kind of people you're going from managing mostly kids who want to get to the next level so badly that they'll do anything, right? And it's just like their work ethic or motivation is like never even really a question. But then you get to the NHL and it's like, hey, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory fashion, but you're dealing with like millionaires who have egos. A lot of them earn egos, right? Like these guys are the best of the best. It's a totally different thing. Some guys can bridge that gap, some guys can't. So I think with Mitch, it's like, yeah, I think he could do a good job, but it's like at this point with where this team is at and who's on the roster and the issues that we had on the team this year, supposedly, where it did seem to be like a lot of people, coach, players manage, like everybody seemed to be at each other's. Like, I don't know if that's the best place to like slip a guy like that into and be like, yeah, could you fix this mess, please, Mitch? Like, I don't know if that's fair to him. Maybe he'd do a great job, but it seems like you'd kind of be throwing him to the wolves a little bit. Like if we were full on 2015 rebuilding right now, you know, and you have all the kids from the Wranglers coming up and you're totally just like, we're rebuilding this, then hell's yes. Mitch Love for sure. Grow with the young team. Absolutely. But at this current moment in time, I'm kind of like a little trepidatious or hesitant to be like, yeah, you're the head coach of the Flames now. Okay, you have to deal with, again, like all the shit we heard about last year. So I think I would be curious to see, but I also have like some reservations about like putting Mitch in that role right away. I think, like you said, Huska, I think if you're going internal, that seems more logical. He's been with those guys. He knows what there's about. He's had some years of pro experience. I think just even from a systems perspective, I think, hey, whether you like Daryl or not, I think Ryan has learned a ton from what Daryl implemented tactically, you know? So if we're going internal, I think Huska kind of would be my choice. I don't know if you agree or not, but like if you're going between Muller, Love, and Huska, I'd go Love 1 or Huska 1, Love 2, Muller 3. Like Mike Keenan is in like Italy. I think Bill Peters is in Russia. I think... Where's Bob Hartley? He's in Russia.
Yeah, he's in Russia. And apparently he runs a podcast too, so that's nice. But I guess
I like how Bob's asking Huberto about like, yeah, tell me how mean Daryl was when it's like you've heard horror stories about Bob, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you don't see the irony here?
I'm like, bro, I'm pretty sure you were worse than Daryl. Like, I'm just
Oh
putting
yeah, he was
like
nuts.
like my entire life savings I will put into that. Like, honestly,
Go listen to some like former Colorado Avalanche talk about like how mean that guy was. Like, you want to talk about big meanies? Holy shit. Like, there's something different about French guys who are mean. It's like, whoa, bro.
if we're looking outside organization hires, obviously the big fancy name that's out right now is Gerard Gallant. Um, Now, if we're going from like a winning standpoint, you posted up a pretty good stat that
Yeah.
got more playoff wins than Flames coaches have had since 2005. Pretty sure it was 29 to 23 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it's bad.
In my view, it's like, okay, you already proved that you have the capability to not be cheap.
Yes.
Brought Daryl back, right?
And you're paying him $8 million to not coach the team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Keep up that sentiment.
I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just like not caught up in this. Everybody seems to not like him. I don't know if it's like old man mean, and that's where I don't like where the discourse is at. Is like old hockey man who's mean is like, we don't want that. We want great communicator, young guy. It's like all of that is superfluous and like bullshit to me. It's like I heard all that shit when they hired Gulletson. Oh, he understands the modern player. He's a progressive coach. Oh yeah, well, he sucked for 2 years, and our franchise, like, we lost 2 prime years of like one of the best young cores this team's ever seen because he wasn't a very good head coach. So like that kind of stuff doesn't matter to me as much. I do think though, like, if you just fired Daryl Sutter because he was clashing with the players, like bringing in Gerard Gallant doesn't seem like the logical next step. But when do they do anything logical? But like, to me, like, it does always come back to winning, and that's really what I like. Because right, like, sure, you can say, oh, we want a good communicator, we want a guy who relates to those young players, the modern players. But it's like, if it doesn't lead to winning, then who gives a shit? It's like, everybody loved Jeff Ward. He was a great communicator. They didn't win jack shit. They were terrible. Same with Glenn. It's like everyone loved Glenn, and they sucked. Right? They love Woodcroft in Edmonton, but I mean, take away the 2 best players in the world, and I mean, we'll see. But I'm just saying, like, those things don't matter to me as much as winning. And I think where you have to get at in your mind as a Flames fan is like, you may want this team to go like this youth rebuild mode, but it's like, I really think they can't resist the temptation to just go for it every year. So it's like, okay, and this is why I was so fine with having Daryl on board. It's like, hey, you're going to do this. This is your strategy. Go for it every year. Make the playoffs. Try to win the cup. If that's your strategy, then Daryl's a great guy to have around for that strategy. It's like, if that's your strategy, yeah, maybe Gerard Gallant is a guy. He's been to a Stanley Cup final and an Eastern Conference final in the last 5 years. So, I mean, it all comes back to what their vision is and what the GM wants to do. But like, in a vacuum, like, if I'm looking at this team and saying we literally just missed the playoffs by 1 point, pretty much, essentially, you win one more game and you're in. And Florida had less points than us. And knowing that this team functions in the way they do, and they just want to get in and go for it, it's like, yeah, I could get behind that. Look at this roster. Could Gallant push them to the next level or get them to the playoffs where they could do some damage? Maybe, probably. Is that a long-term solution? Probably not. But I don't know. Winning, to me, all I want to do is win by hook or by crook. So like, I could be sold on that if you really twisted my arm.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess there's also that familiarity factor too with Gallant. Like, he's coached Huberto. Huberto had above point per game years, both those years, I think, that Gallant was behind the bench. And then Andrew Brunette, that's another candidate, I think, that should be talked about at least. Not even just like a discourse of like, oh, there's familiarity with the guys from Florida, but like, it was honestly baffling when he did not get the head coaching job in Florida. And I mean, that's kind of aged into it being not much of a question anymore, because clearly when that team gets hot, they're.
Well, I mean, if Andrew Brunette had Matthew Tkachuk on his team, like,
exactly.
I feel like it's not Paul Maurice who's the X factor in all of this. I feel like it's definitely 19.
Yeah. It goes back to systems, because I feel like if we're gonna keep up the sort of style of play that we have been executing under Daryl and what Jeff Ward attempted to execute, I'm just gonna put that in there. You take a look at that discourse and okay, internally promoting, sure, I could see it. With Brunette, it's like at first I was like, okay, if you're gonna keep Daryl, I would love Brunette as an assistant.
Oh yeah, power play coach. Hell yeah.
But given that he's already an assistant in New Jersey and he's probably been like one of the, like, I get Lindy Ruff as the head coach, but like I have to imagine he's had a huge, I guess, hand in elevating that group the way that they've elevated. I mean, it's the greatest point increase in back-to-back seasons in NHL history, which is crazy. I feel like Andrew Brunette, just in general, that would be a name that I could get behind, because it's like, okay, even if we get bounced in the playoffs, if we have some discourse in the playoffs, I would love to watch them score 5-6 goals a game. Like, I'm sorry, 18-19 was fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it was fun until Bill Peters decided to change the entire way they played, and you idiot, you like, instead of doubling down on what made them good, they did the exact opposite. Yeah. But I agree. Like, I think Brunette, of the people who are available and just like out there in the public sphere, I think he would be like probably my first choice. Mm-hmm. Like you said, obviously and you're not doing this because I see, different people, and I kind of fall in this too, is like, I've been vocally frustrated with Huberdeau this year. And it's like, I didn't like his comments about Daryl last week, but it's like, you can't cater everything to him. But I don't even know if it's like you're catering to Huberdeau, right? Like, he was a good player before Andrew Brunette was around. Yeah. But Andrew Brunette, when he was there, got the best out of him. It would be like if like Columbus was like going to hire Daryl Sutter, poor Johnny Gaudreau, but I'd be like, that'd be sweet. Like, Johnny was awesome under Daryl, for sure. Like, go for it. Those guys click. So I think that is a factor, right? Because that is a big problem right now, whether you want to admit it or not. Like, the fact Huberdeau sucked this year is a massive problem for the Flames, and you can't just sweep it under the rug and ignore it. So if that helps address that, then there's a plus. I think he bridges the gap maybe between like an inexperienced internal hire and maybe like an old kind of like retread like Gallant or someone else who's like coached a bunch. It's like he's had a little experience, and I think that maybe does instill some confidence, right? It's like, at least we know what he's capable of. Like, he led the Panthers to the President's Trophy after Joel Quenneville left. It was a shitty situation. Like, he did a good job with that, keeping that team together. And like Joel Quenneville, I mean, his system won 3 Stanley Cups and was the basis for what Brunette was implementing in Florida. So it's like, if you want some of Joel Quenneville's system stuff without the old man that's Joel Quenneville, and Andrew Brunette, like you said, he's doing a great job in New Jersey with a pretty young team, with a really skilled team. You just look at his resume and it's like, yeah, that's a guy who I could get behind and feel a little bit confident that he could come in and get the best out of this roster, and also be a guy you could keep around for a little while. And I think there is maybe something in today's game of like having somebody who's played be around. Like, I don't think that's true all the time, but like I always find myself like, you hear guys talk about it a lot, right? Like, even if Daryl's like, oh, he played, this guy played, they really know what it's like. Mm-hmm. And it's not always the case, but it feels like Brunette, that could be a positive for him. Like, you look at like how Marty St. Louis, like some of the tactics he's implementing there. So it feels like he could do a really good job, and I would get behind that, just based on like, he checks pretty much every checkbox you would want if you were a fan. Obviously, the fact that Panthers fired him and then are like actually having playoff success is like, maybe Bill Zito does know best. But like I said, I think that's more Kachuk than the coach. But Brunette would be like number one on my list, because experience, he's had some success in the league. He's shown he can work with Huberdeau. He's shown he can produce a fast, high-scoring team. And, his work with the Devils is undeniably great. Like, you look at him and Kirk Muller in opposite lights. It's like, yeah, I want that kind of team. I don't want
Oh God. Yeah.
Just why is the guy who spent it? How many goals did Kirk Muller score? I have no clue. He was maybe still playing when I was a kid, but like I feel like he was way more defensive than he should be for a guy who's like running the power play. It'd be like if you brought in like freaking like maybe I'm just mixing up my old Montreal Canadiens and thinking he's like Bob Gainey, but it'd be weird. It'd be like bringing like Backlund or Coleman in to coach the power play. It's like you're a defensive guy. Like don't.
Dude, his I'm actually looking at his career stats right now. Okay, so he played 1,349 games. He had 357 goals and 959 points. But his plus minus was minus 147.
Dude, what the hell? He played through the 80s. Oh man, holy cow. He's an old school guy. But yeah, give me Brunette. Like I think that would be, and again, like maybe it's somebody we don't know is on the table, but like it feels like I'm trying to come up with a comparable of like a fit, but that just feels like too perfect of a fit to ignore. Like they better be interviewing him at the very least.
Oh yeah. Like he's easily my number one pick. I guess GM it's a toss up. Just give me someone who actually has a track record of A, being a GM, because that's not bothered them before, and B, actually showing that you had success at a certain level as a GM or contributed to a franchise that is winning, like Carolina. With Friedman saying what he said today on 32 Thoughts, the entire executive staff for the Hurricanes is on the radar for other teams for promotions. Like that's insane.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want. Like you want other teams headhunting your executive. It's like I don't think anybody's really been headhunting. Well, I don't know. Can't speak to this, but it's like, hey, Don Maloney, assistant general, could we maybe talk to him? It's like nobody's talking to Don Maloney. I guess Conroy got an interview in Buffalo a couple of years ago, but I can't see people banging down the doors to get inside the heads of the Flames executives from the last 10 years.
And I mean, I want to trust Maloney so bad when he says he's looking for young, progressive, someone to move things forward. Because, like, if that tidbit is true that they offered him, they called him like in March.
Yeah.
Like, if that's true, and he was like, "Guys, what are you doing?"
And the fact, like this again, like you peel it back, and it's like they wanted Brad to stay. They were fine with things how they were. Right. Like they were totally cool to continue this. Whatever you think of Brad Shiliving, I think we can all agree, like it's kind of gotten off the rails here, 10 years, 2 playoff round wins. So they wanted Brad to come back. If Brad didn't want to come back, they wanted Maloney to do it. So it's like, again, like I feel like, I don't know if you can take Don Maloney at his word and be like, yeah, we're going to hire a young progressive guy who's the best man for the job, when it's like, that they already tried to get Brad back. They already tried to offer it to a guy who's older and even more old school. So you're just at this point, you're just like, show me. I need to see it.
Yeah.
Because you can talk all you want. I can't believe you until this actually occurs. And then I actually see, like, this will probably be 3-year thing for me to be like, yeah, they did a good job or a bad job. And that's just the nature of it.
I just want to be in the playoffs next year. It's so lame.
Oh, dude. All I can, watching the Panthers, especially, well, it's a special kind of pain seeing Kachuk and Bennett, but just like watching all these teams and being like, if we'd beat Chicago once, we'd be there. And like, again, whatever you think of Daryl, he would have had them. They're dangerous. With Daryl Sutter playoff team is dangerous. We could have been right there.
Like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube, and then I guess download the show on streaming, add it, save it for later, click, just listen. Even if you listen to like 5 minutes, it counts as a click. So you're golden there. And then go check out the In the Dome show. They basically were the whole reason why we even started a show, because they're kind of our inspiration. That's why we collab with them. So yeah. Thank you for listening.